let's see here. Well, there's kind of a lot in here. So instead of that, maybe I'll resort to this. There we go. So, Professor Emeritus Dennis Patrick Slattery has taught at Pacifica for more than 2 decades as a distinguished core faculty member and humanities and culture. You know, academic interests are sometimes mentioned at times like this. I'd rather say passions, because that's actually truer. His academic passions include the poetic imagination, writing and reading as mythic activities, the relation of psyche, spirit, and matter, the work of Joseph Campbell, psychology and literature, and the place of contemplation in academia, where it belongs. He serves as faculty advisor to 2 journals, and his books include The Idiot, Dostoevsky's Fantastic Prince, The Wounded Body, Remembering the Markings of the Flesh, Grace in the Desert, Harvesting Darkness, which are essays on literature, myth, and culture, and more recently, A Limbo of Shards, Essays on Memory and Metaphor. He has won numerous awards. There are too many to mention in the time we have available. I want to mention, though, that he initiated the Dennis P. and Sandra L. Slattery Writing Achievement at Via Angela St. Joseph High School in Cleveland. It's an endowment and a cash award. He was awarded a medallion for service by Pacifica. He has been nominated twice by Pacifica to be Poet Laureate for Santa Barbara. He is a distinguished professor, as I mentioned earlier, recipient of the 2012 Jan Lee Prize for Analysis in the Arts for one of his essays, recipient of First Place Poetry Prize in the category of adult poetry from the Greater New Braunfels Art Council for one of his poems, which was called Leave Your Gun at Home. And finally, I'll just say that if you should be lucky enough to find that great dictionary that contains a complete definition of all archetypes that many of us have been looking for many years, I have no doubt there will be many entries in there referring to him. And when you look up the one that says teacher, it will have his picture. Please welcome Dennis Patrick Slattery.
Who is that guy? Let me just check in here. Can I have my 10 minutes back?
Yeah. Good.
Take your time.
So I want, and it's real important for me to leave time for you to respond, make an observation, ask a question. I always feel so incomplete when I'm an audience member and the person speaks right up to the end and says, "Thank you, we're out of time." And it's like I've heard a half a talk because the mix didn't happen. So, yeah, 11:30? Beautiful, thank you. I'm writing it down because I've got to keep my eye on the clock. Craig, thank you. That was so beautiful and scary. Sometimes I look at the writing that I've done and I ask myself, who wrote that stuff? I mean, you've had the experience where you write something, you put it away for a while, you come back to it, you read it, you can hear your voice, but there's something else, there's another voice in there. And I think that's the voice of the psyche itself that participates both in reading and in writing. So I've been offering writing personal myth retreats for about 15 years. And at one point, something said you ought to gather up what you've done. So I published this book, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, and I call it Writing Myth, R-I-T-I-N-G. And the publisher kept changing it to W-R-I-T. And I said, no, writing is a ritual. And they said, okay, then we'll do the R. And then the second part of it is mythic, writing with the W, plotting your personal story. and I hope you get the pun there. I want to read you just a paragraph before I move into a PowerPoint. You see, I love the idea that myths are stories. And that's the original meaning of the word. Mythos is the word for plot in Greek. But over the time I've been studying myth and mythological stories, I grew increasingly dissatisfied because I began to wonder, what is it behind the story that shapes it, that gives it form? So I started to back up from narrative to what's behind the narrative. And where I am right now is what is finally behind the narrative, and there's several steps leading to the narrative, is psychic energy. That's what propels plots, psychic energy. And you know that when you experience that, either in the movie theater or at home watching a film, you know when that psychic energy is really connecting with your psychic energy. You get excited about it, you may emotional expression. In reading, you may start underlining. See, when you underline in a book, that's when your personal myth has tapped into the myth that's driving the work. Fiction or nonfiction, philosophy, theology, psychology, botany, it doesn't matter. So I want to share with you on page 3 just a section here, because I think I capture a sense of how I understand personal myth. And our personal myths are never alienated or divorced from the larger collective myth that we're in. So we are really myths. Put an S at the end of the word. We're not one myth, we're myths. So here's what I say. My personal myth is in large measure the consequence of how I structure my images of reality based on patterns that I have developed from my own life experiences, your life experiences, as well as deeper pre-existing arrays embedded in the psyche of all of us. Further, lurking behind these patterns, I believe are energy fields of the psyche that are both unique to me, and you have your own uniqueness, and transcend me because they participate in a much larger cosmos than my own micro world is capable of holding. However, I am able to participate in this larger cosmos. So to study the contours of one's personal myth, which is the intention of this book, through both a variety of sources on the subject. I think I have 135 sources in the back. I mean, it could keep you busy, off the street, out of trouble, for probably the next 2 decades. It did me. And now I'm raising hell again, and it's kind of fun. And related disciplines, as well as numerous writing meditations. There's 85 writing meditations in this book, with each one carrying about 7 questions. So that could keep you off the street for another couple of decades. And you can actually retire then, you know, after. So how we discern these patterns in the prose of our lives, in the poetics of the way of our knowing and shaping reality. See, reality is shaping us, but we're participants. We're also shaping it. And, you know, knowing the difference between where you're shaping reality and where you're being shaped by it is to become aware of your personal myth. It has magnificent utilitarian uses to know your own myth. The more each of us is able to discern the formats, as well as the energies, as well as the persons that inhabit and shape our fantasies, our daydreams, our night narratives, our modes of perception, what attracts me, what interests me, what repels me, what I find disgusting, what I recoil from, to what is distasteful, boring, ugly, beautiful, where and when I distort things, where I disturb and deflect, and to see within those patterns the energy flow of invisible presences. They're invisible and they're palpable at the same time. Is to glimpse the outlines of the plot of our lives. Moreover, and I'll end with this, the more honestly and fully we comprehend the deep taproots of our narratives, as well as the elaborate fictions that we are, and I don't mean by fictions lies, I mean fabrications. Look, everyone in this room, thank goodness, is covered with fabric. We are fabrications. What you chose to wear today is part of your fabricating yourself. And that whole metaphor is really a rich one in terms of the fictions that we are. And continue to shape and be shaped by, the more our plot complexity reveals itself. So a very short incipit that begins the book, and this is by C.G. Jung. And I don't know you, I don't know what familiarity you have with Jung or the others, and it's really not important. But one of the works that he wrote towards the end of his life was a memoir entitled Memories, Dreams, Reflections. Here's what he says early on in the book. And he's trying his hand carving in stone and building a tower in Bollingen in Switzerland. And he began to ask, well, you know, what am I up to? What's going on here? Naturally, now I'm going to read him. Naturally, I thought about the significance of what I was doing, and I asked myself, quote, now, really, what are you about? This is Jung, later in life. You are building a small town and doing it as if, I'm hesitating on that because that's one of the characteristics of myth that I'll tease, as if it were a rite, R-I-T-E. I had no answer to my question, only the inner certainty that I was on the way to discovering my own myth. And this is Jung late in life. I'll tell you folks, there's hope for all of us. I mean, it's so steep in the unconscious, the collective. And later in life, he's wrestling with, what's my personal myth? It's a lifelong project. And I don't think any of us will get to the bottom of all of the complexity of our personal myth. But the journey to try it, to discover it, is worth every moment. So let's see what happens here. This is my third PowerPoint in my professional life, so hang on. But I've got Ivan, my guardian angel, over here. So he's going to help me. Yeah. So what constitutes, I think there's more than 10, but who's counting? Sorry. A personal myth is a loom. Now this I borrowed. This is the only one I borrowed. The rest are mine. I got to be honest here. A personal myth is a loom on which we weave the raw materials of daily experience into a coherent story. We're always trying to make every one of our days cohere with all the other days. So how does that happen when we remember? Well, we remember selectively. We leave stuff out because the psyche is trying to grasp a coherent narrative. And it is creating it. And again, I think it's being created by it. Feinstein and Krippner's book is Your Mythic Path. And reading that, I don't know, 15, 18 years ago, gave me the idea of working this corridor, personal myth. A little visible for you. A personal myth organizes my experience. Can you see okay? It organizes my experiences of the world and determines or influences. Determines feels to, but influences. Okay. By what categories I will engage the world's matter. I mean, it's an implied defense of liberal learning. See, if your categories of awareness, I'm just going to make up a number, are 5, then the world will come in only through those 5 categories. Nothing else can come in. We have to have categories of awareness to become conscious of something. On the other hand, if your categories of awareness number 35, then the world can come in and be processed and be understood by that larger set of categories. No category, no awareness. Illness can become a huge category of awareness. Loss can become a huge category of awareness. So suddenly you're seeing the world and understanding it through the lens of loss. That's huge. One who has never felt like anything has been lost in their lives of real importance can't experience the world on that level. So life experiences, absolutely. But the disciplines that Craig so beautifully laid out in our 9 programs are all categories of awareness. So it's not that you know more, that's data processing. You're aware of more, that's psyche, and that's myth. You see? And maybe you pose a question or an observation when I finish, and yeah, we're good. A personal myth molds my life events into categories of awareness, and it overlaps with the one that I just read. But that sense of a life being molded or shaped, not determined. I'm wanting, not that cause and effect isn't part of our expanded, as Wallace Stevens says, poetry expands our orbit of understanding by analogy. Everything is by analogy. Psyche moves by analogy. Listen to Jung. Volume 9, 2 of the collected works. It's entitled Ion, Researches into the Phenomenology of the Self. Paragraph 414. I like to show off because I've got 2 passages of Jung memorized. This is one of them. Coming to the Myth program, I'll share the second one with you. So, and you know, the collected works, oftentimes when we cite them, it's not page number, it's paragraph number. So it could be any edition of the book, and the paragraph number will hold it, like the line numbers of Dante's Commedia. It doesn't matter what translation, I mean, especially if it's bilingual, that those lines will be the same. So here's what Jung says. And I think, now I taught rhetoric for 10, 12 years, and I learned all the stuff that as a 7th grader, screwing around all the time, I paid no attention to the Ursuline nuns when they were trying to teach us this. But when I had to teach it, man, did I learn it. So I didn't look too stupid in front of a group of freshmen who had learned it because they went to good schools. So Jung puts, I think, the kernel of what depth psychology is in a dependent adverbial clause. Listen to the quote. Since analogy formation is a law which to a large extent governs the psyche, comma, independent clause that we don't know and we don't need to know because I haven't memorized it, but we don't need it because he's referring to something in paragraph 413. Listen to it again. And I want to just encourage you to write this one down. Since analogy formation, the capacity to create metaphors, symbols, figurative speaking, as if speaking, he believes is a law which to a large extent governs the psyche. I think it's a magnificent insight on Jung's part. I mean, for me, he's suggesting, the psyche is fundamentally poetic. It's figurative. And we get caught in literalism. We're as unpoetic as we can be standing up. Yeah. Literalism kills the poetic. And it really assassinates the imagination. It assassinates it. I'm using that violent verb carefully. It runs a stake through the heart of the imagination. And when Craig was speaking, I thought, I think all of the programs we offer here have the imagination at its core. Inflected in different ways. But I think the imagination is the linchpin that I think holds this place together and holds these programs in connection with one another. So I wanted you to have that quote from Jung because that's really worth thinking about. And I'm sure there are many of you who write poetry, who love poetry and read it, who are painters, artists. These are all analogies of being. And they're, whatever sluice you move through, that's your way of shaping yourself aesthetically. Yeah. Okay, let's go on. And just for fun, those are the categories. Little spooky, don't literalize them. Yeah, now this is really important. And I'm going to tell you the title of a book. But first, let's look at it. A personal myth frames the als ob. That's what Jung uses, that German, or as if, quality of the soul. See, I want to suggest to you that the soul is always as ifing itself in the world. And as ifs, it's finding analogies of itself. Which takes us back to the previous one. The as-if quality of my days expresses the mythic principles that I live by. When you're in a conversation or you overhear a conversation, watch when people say, it's like, it was as if. Because right there, I think soul is animating. It's finding an analogy to get at. And we know how frustrating it is when we can't find the words to describe something. It's so frustrating because that's where the soul wants to speak. And when it can't, it's tremendously frustrating. And that's also the other piece about like a liberal arts education. It builds vocabulary so that you have more media at your disposal. A friend recently told me of a quote by the philosopher Wittgenstein, who said, "No language, no reality." If we can't find words to convey it, there's a crazy way in which it didn't happen. That brings us into a conversation about the whole mystery of words and language itself, which is a huge one. So it frames the as-ifness. So the book that I want you to know, and I think I was reading either Jung or Hillman, both of whom cite this writer, and I thought, well, geez, if this is a book that both Jung and Hillman cite, maybe this is one that I should get. And it's by a philosopher who published it, I want to say in 1916, and his name is Hans Vaihinger. And let me spell it if you're interested in taking this down. Vaihinger. You're going to love the title. The Philosophy of As If. The Philosophy of As If. And then the subtitle, which I've never mastered, the economic, social, something, fictions of man. Yeah, it's brilliant. And in that book, he probably gives us 200, 300 as-if examples. Yeah. So Jung read him, Hillman read him. It's a brilliant study of two words. Yeah. So Hans Vaihinger. Okay. A personal myth is flexible, Protean. I want to say something about Proteus in just a moment. And elastic. So long as it remains organic and vital. Let me read it again. A personal myth is flexible, Protean, elastic, and I would tuck another word in there now that I'm reading it, organic, so long as it remains organic and vital. I might have thought about moving that up. Now, when a myth becomes a cadaver, and myths do cadaverize, if you let me get away with that very awkward verb. When a myth freezes, becomes cadaverous, you have ideology. I believe that all ideologies are once living myths that have suffered sclerosis, that have suffered arthritis. And if you know people who have arthritis, you have arthritis yourself. I've had 2 hips replaced over a 20-year period. One of the things that arthritis does, it starts canceling out movement. You can't move, you can't rotate, you lose flex, you lose myth. So I'm suggesting to you that a cadaverous, when a myth stiffens, when a myth stiffens into a cadaver, ideology rises up. Now, ideologies are literalisms with a vengeance. And I say that because oftentimes an ideology says, not only am I right and you're wrong, but I'm going to assassinate you and get you off the planet. And pick up any day's newspaper, and you'll see examples of that happening globally. It's like ideologies cannot tolerate another point of view. They're frozen. They're frozen. And maybe assassinating any contrary voices is a way for that ideologue to be comfortable. Because for people holding ideologies, any other point of view makes them very uncomfortable. And if they have the power, then they can eliminate that voice, that presence. So that's an important insight for me that I wanted to share with you. That ideologies were once organic mythologies, but they lost their gut, they lost their flexibility, they lost their elasticity. And so, see, ideologies can't grow. They're frozen. Now, I live in an area in Texas, up above San Antonio and south of Austin, where there are pockets of a fundamentalist. See, all forms of fundamentalisms are myths that have grown cadaverous. And they're hardened in place. And you don't have conversations. Conversation is wiped out. Because a real conversation has got to have give and take. Yeah, I see your point, but I still want to argue. Okay, that's fine. But, you know, I love when the politicians make some crazy outlandish statement, and then they end the outlandish statement with period. No talking, don't question me. I love that. With this whole bathroom bill that the Austin legislators got themselves caught in. And this is why we can't have anything like that. Period. Oh, well, nothing to say. Let it go. Yeah. So that's the punchline of the ideologue. Period. Proteus. Oh, thank you for your image, Proteus. Proteus, for me, shows himself most fully in Book 4 of the Odyssey. And in that book, Telemachus, books 1 through 4 of the Odyssey, Telemachus has left Ithaca, and he's on the search for his father. And Athena is guiding him. And she says, first go to, Sparta. And then Menelaus' home is Sparta. First go to the old man, the one that has most history. And then from there, go to Sparta and talk to Menelaus and Helen. And so he does. And Menelaus says, you know, I saw your father. I think I was the last to see your father. Let me tell you what it was like for me to try to get home. So Menelaus relates his story of trying to get home. Of course, you know that Odysseus is the last to arrive home after the Trojan War. Homer tells us it takes him 10 years. So 10 years battling, 10 years trying to get home. So 2 decades. Telemachus was just a tiny infant. Now he's 20 and he's out searching. He's heading out to get his education. It's not accidental that, at least in our country, I can't speak for others, but 18, 19 years old, time to cut loose. Time to head out. Go away to college. Get your own place, find work. That archetype is very powerful, and Homer develops it beautifully. So Menelaus tells him the story of coming to an island from Egypt. They're snagged there. They don't know what's the next move. They've lost their way. They think they were going home, but now they're confused. So Proteus's daughter sees Menelaus and his men on the beach and asks them who they are and what they're doing. And Menelaus tells her. And I think she gets a crush on Menelaus. So she says, here's how I can help you. You need to hide right here in the shallows until my father returns in the evening. And when he returns, you have to grab hold of him and hold on, because he's going to turn into a tree, a river, a lion. He's going to change, but you have to persist and not let him go. And then he'll speak to you. So she furnishes them, Menelaus and his men, with seal skins, so they can look like they're part of the ocean life. But these seal skins stink. I mean, the stench off them, and the men they're retching. So she gets ambrosia and gives it to each man to breathe. And that cancels out or neutralizes the smell of the skin. True to form, Proteus comes up out of the sea. Menelaus and his men grab him, and sure enough, he begins shape-shifting. Proteus is the great shape-shifter in myth. There's others that shape-shift, but he really carries the mother load. Finally, he realizes, I can't escape them. So he turns back into himself. Now, here's the interesting part. Instead of him asking them what they want, he asks them, what do you need? It's a brilliant moment. What I want may be not what I need. And maybe what I need is not what I want. So he shows his brilliance. And Menelaus says, to go home is what we need and we want. And he says, fine, go back to Egypt. And Menelaus says, we've just come from Egypt. And Proteus asks him, you want to go home? Yes. Go back to where you just came from. Now, we could talk psychologically and mythically about the implications that sometimes home is not the direct path from A to B. Sometimes it's from A to C, to F, to B. And that's the wandering of Odysseus. So Menelaus, in 4 pages, gives us a miniature version of the 24 books of the Odyssey with Odysseus trying to get home. We get like a snapshot, and then Odysseus has that big epic picture of what it is to go home. In the Greek, the word is nostos. N-O-S-T-O-S. Do you hear any English word in that? Nostalgia. Nostalgia, absolutely right. And for years I thought nostos meant the desire to go home. But it actually carries the idea that nostos is the grief one feels at not being able to get home. You see how different that is? It's the grieving because I can't get there, which heightens the value of home because I can't get it. Yeah. So that's the Proteus I work from. He will shape-shift on you, but if you persist, oh no, things are too hard, and you let him go, you let him go. But the wisdom that he carries, you'll not receive it. And Proteus knows when you have held on long enough. And then he'll entertain telling you what you need. It's so important. It's just brilliant on Homer's part to make that distinction. And actually, I've talked about this, but I want to read it. I don't need to recapitulate. So a personal myth can harden and calcify from an organic, living entity into a rigid dogmatism that is closer to a cadaver than to a malleable. You know, it's open, it's willing to yield, it will shift. Life principle. Yeah, and we've spoken about it, so we don't need to dwell there. That's what a dogma looks like. Whoops, okay. Thank you, sir. A personal myth is a mode of perceiving. You know, I'm at a place where I'm wanting to suggest to you that myths are attitudes. Myths are attitudes. They're modes of perceiving. You know, an attitude is a way of perceiving. You get a lousy attitude, that's how the world's going to come in. If you try to lighten up with your attitude, then the world's going to come in along that mode of perception. This is so important for me to encourage you to think about. And I'm not dumping or trashing the nature of story, but the stories don't interest me as much as the patterns. Now, you know, where I am in my own development, and the Greek and Roman and Hindu and Arabic stories are rich, but I'm interested in the patterns behind them. So it's a mode of perceiving which may be more important to its health and growth than the subjects and objects of perception. Now that begins to smack a little bit of phenomenology, in which attitude enters. The way of experiencing something enters. So I'm suggesting that at least as importantly is the attitude, the mode of perceiving, as is the thing perceived. Yeah. And I think myths cross that boundary back and forth, all the time. Because myths are modes of perceiving, but they're also narratives of something perceived. So they're both. Yeah, we're good, because I really want to leave some time for you. A personal myth, whoops. Perfect. A personal myth is a way, it's a way of, or a via into the aesthetic, poetic, mystical, and transcendent qualities of my being. See, it's a way in. How many of you in here have a favorite myth story? What? Well, you all better sign up for the myth program. This is not good. Then you earn your doctorate in myth, and then go on to the somatics. It's so important, and I don't know how much reading on myth. My favorite myth, and I've been hugely influenced by the first couple of pages of Moby Dick, in which Ishmael, I think, is telling us how to read Moby Dick through the myth of Narcissus. So for me, the Narcissus echo myth is, I want to suggest to you that I think it's the myth of myths. And Ovid's Metamorphosis, that beautiful Roman classic work, he devotes 7 pages to the myth of Narcissus, one of the longest pieces in there. Because the myth of Narcissus puts us in touch with self-reflection. You know the story. It puts us in touch with self-reflection, but it does something else. It shows psychologically how one can easily, with too much self-reflection, move into self-fixation. Now that's a fine line. You know, to be reflective is, absolutely necessary to be self-fixated. Now we're in a whole different program. Yeah. So the Narcissus myth shows, just read it carefully, 6 pages, how that works. And you know what screws him up? He stiff arms Echo. When he stiff arms Echo, he's lost the echoic. And what the echoic carries for us is irony. We lose a sense of the ironic. Like, I really, I believe in this thing and I'm really serious about it, but I'm not taking me seriously. I stay loose. That's what irony allows for. Space. So when Narcissus spurns Echo, he has no echo chamber by which to hear himself. And, I'm just thinking a lot about it. Maybe the loss of the echoic is behind all literalisms, all dogmas. See, they lose the echoic. They lose what's sonorous, if you will. And then it's a hard freeze. Then it's a hard freeze. So, good. Nice road. Go around that road coming in. Who's the guy riding the Harley? There he is. Yeah, we talked Harley stuff when he drove in. A personal myth is intimately related to my organic bodily being. I really want us to hear how myths are embodied and myths are about our bodies. It's not like it's head up. No, it's full human being. So a personal myth is intimately related to my organic bodily being and emanates, in part, from my incarnated self. My 2 sons didn't get to know my father very well. A lot of distance between, and then my father passed away. But I'm blown away by how sometimes one of my sons gestures like my father. They weren't around him long enough. But they carry his myth. And I carried his myth, and I carried it down through him, and my wife with her family. So the gestures are mythic. Can be. Gestures can be mythic. And it's one way that a family's tradition passes itself down. And trauma as well. Very good. So I'm going to wrap this up pretty quickly. Let me go, because I'm going to stop in a minute. We've put a lot of material out. We don't need to race to the end. I think with this one I'm going to stop. A personal myth is comprised of energy fields, that's what I started off with, of consciousness that shift, intensify, diminish, to allow for certain elements to enter, and myths also deny stuff trying to come in, as well as invite it. How much tolerance does each of us have to be made uncomfortable when ideas or people or emotions come in that begin to rock the stability of our core myth? I mean, and it's a rhetorical question, but I think it's a real important one to ask. How much can you tolerate? And sometimes you have no choice. Life comes at us, and we just have to survive it. There's no, I can't let, no. Sometimes life says, we're kind of indifferent to what you want to let in and what not. But boy, are those places rich with learning and shifting the myth. Yeah. So I think I've got a couple more. I'm going to stop. And I want to invite all of you, observation, question. We've got about, I don't know, 6-7 minutes, and please.
3 things, really.
Yeah.
The book with the R writing, is it in the bookstore here?
Oh, I hope so.
And then, do you have a private practice here in Texas?
I'm not an analyst.
Oh, at all?
No.
No.
Did I fake it? Did you think you were listening to it? No, I'm not. I'm not. But please. And then you had the third?
Got it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just okay. I'm hoping the bookstore has the writing in, because it's a book that you can use on your own to explore. I love using it in groups, but I wrote it for someone, number one, who wants to read more on myth. I said there's 135 entries, a lot of Campbell, a lot of Jung, but other works that you may know. And I think writing is, on some levels, richer than speaking, as a way to capture something, you know? Yeah. Question, please.
A quick comment.
Yeah.
You mentioned the myth of Narcissus, one of your favorites.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone in here is interested in rock and roll and metal music, but Marilyn Manson has a new song called Deep Six, and the line in it that just clicked with me, and it's so funny, is, you know what Zeus said to Narcissus? You better watch yourself.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. Can I use that the next time I do the talk? I like that. You better watch yourself. Beautiful. Yes.
I have a question. I thought it was really fascinating how you talked about how the living myth turns into sort of the calcified dogma.
Yeah.
And then the other thing you said, which I don't know if this is linked, so I was kind
Yeah,
of curious.
that's all right.
Earlier on, you had mentioned that there was a point at which it's sort of like your personal myth, and then what was it, sort of internal versus external circumstances. You're playing around a little bit with sort of what you can control and what you can't control.
Yes.
So I was wondering if anything, like, how does that dogma emerge, and is it linked at all to people having to respond to these sort of circumstances beyond their control? I mean,
Nice.
I didn't know if those were linked at all.
No, I like your observation, and for me, they emanate from fear. And I don't mean to simplify, because it's probably more complex than that, but there's a fear. I think one of the greatest fears that all of us entertain is the fear of change. That's why I just want to salute all of you for your courage. I think that you all made a decision to come here, scope us out, look at the programs. Sometimes I think this is the most important decision, not what program you choose, that you showed up here. Something drove you to show up here. That's huge, and I think it's an act of courage, because, and I've been doing these presentations for over 2 decades here, and I love doing them. But I think all of you, and myself included, I mean, I came here fearful of, geez, could I handle a 7-hour teaching day? Because I'd been programmed to 1 hour and 15 minutes, or 50 minutes, which is just, I mean, it's hilariously laughable, the 50-minute college classroom. You take attendance, you clear your throat, and they're already closing their books, or now their iPads and everything. Well, great, you all know your names now, so, we'll see you Wednesday. And it's just good. But here, 7 hours, we can really drill deep. Yeah. So I think all of you are here sharing some of that fear, but also courageous, because you're even sitting here, you're inviting change. You're already inviting it. Others, we've got about 3 minutes. Yeah.
Just curious over the fact that, so if a myth stiffens, or it becomes a cadaver, it's not necessarily, well, it is implying that it's dead. Is it reversible, or is it something that, like, is it symbolic of change that you let go of, or is it trauma that you will hold on to? Is there the process of reversal, or
That's good.
like a phoenix that just you rid yourself of?
I think something needs to disassemble it from the outside. That's been my experience. something needs to come at it. I mean, if it's really cadaverous, it shatters it and gives you new life at the same time. So many people who have had illnesses that have kept them out of the world. I remember St. Ignatius with his illness. I can't remember, 6 or 8 months. He said it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it made me, through the corridor of the disease, to reassess everything that I thought and have held on to as valuable. Yeah. A divorce, the death of somebody, these are big traumatic smashers. And then people say, and I used to think that this and this was important. How did I get caught in that? But it's from that other perspective because the myth has been re-mythologized. Yeah. Linda, please.
Dennis, I was just thinking from what this said over here.
Yep.
It makes it, my voice is funny today, sorry. But it makes me think about the alchemical operation of calcification for something rigidifying, right?
Yes.
And you need to pour in solutio, the solution.
Nice.
And it comes apart.
Yes.
And then it has the potential to reform.
Yeah.
And so on manual, so quite often the patient will come in and the symptom is profound depression. And it's with the tears and the flow that something transforms in their pain. And yet it's the solutio of the tears and the water that opens something and loosens the calcification so that it can reform in a new way.
Nice. Beautiful. And were you able to hear Linda? And she was bringing in a huge part of this conversation that I didn't mention, and that is the steps in alchemy that move one from calcinatio to solutio. Something enters and starts dissolving. Ahab has one moment, 4/5 of the way through Moby Dick. And he's speaking to Starbuck, his first mate, and it's a cloudless, sunny sky. The seas are calm. And he looks into Starbuck's eye, and he says, there's nothing greater than to see oneself in the orb of another. Now, it's the Narcissus myth, but it's been, the traditional myth has been hijacked by a real relationship. And so for me, Starbuck at that moment is Echo. And then Ahab, goes to the side of the ship and he looks over the side and he sheds one tear. And Ishmael, I like to say Ishmael, not Melville, because Ishmael's telling the story. Melville's the author. Ishmael's the narrator, and they're different. He says that one tear changed the entire chemistry of the ocean. I mean, an alchemical moment coming off of Linda's observations. So I better stop. So I'll be here for lunch, and then I'll be here for the 2 myth information meetings. And I just really want to wish you wisdom, because making the choice for what program is that's a big one. That's a big one. So my hope is that you find the right place for you while you're here with us today. And you've been a great audience, so thank you very much. Very much. Beautiful.
Can you stay there for just one more moment?
Yes.